It's raining. Continuando. In the time that followed, Töúr spoke much with Mím, and sitting with him alone, he listened to his love and tale of his life. For Mím came of dwarves that were banished in ancient days from the great war cities of the east, and long before the return of Morgoth, they wandered westward into Beleriand, but they became diminished. But they became diminished in stature and in smithcraft, and they took to lives of stealth, walking with bowed shoulders and furtive steps. Before the dwarves of Nogrod and Belagost came west over the mountains the elves of Beleriand, who knew not what these others were, and they hunted them and slew them. But afterwards they let them alone, and they were called Noigith Nibin, or the petty dwarves, in the Sindarian tongue. They loved none but themselves, and if they feared and hated the orcs, they hated the Eldar no less, and the exiles most of all, for the Noldor, they said, had stolen their lands and their homes. Long ere King Finrod Felagund came over the sea, the caves of Nargothrond were discovered by them, and by them its delving was begun. And beneath the crown of Amonrud, the bald hill, the slow lands of the petty dwarves had bored and deepened the caves through the long years that they dwelt there, untroubled by the grey elves of the woods. But now, at last, they had dwindled and died out of Middle-earth, all save Mím and his two sons, and Mím was old even in the reckoning of dwarves, old and forgotten. And in his halls the smithies were idle, and the axes rusted, and their name was remembered only in ancient tales of Doriath and Nargothrond. But when the year drew midwinter, snow came down from the north heavier than they had known it in the river vales, and Amonrud was covered deep. And they said that the winters worsened in Beleriand, and as powers of Angband grew, they only knew the hardiest dared to stir abroad. Some fell sick, all were pinched with hunger. But in the dim dark of a dusk's winter, but in the dim dusk of a winter's day, they appeared suddenly among them, a man, and as it seemed, of great bulk and girth, cloaked and hooded in white. He walked up to the fire without a word, and when men sprang up in fear, he laughed and threw back his hood, and beneath his wide cloak he bore a great pack. And then the light of the fire of Töúr looked again on the face of Beleg Cuthalion. Thus Beleg returned once more to Töúr, and their meeting was glad, and with him he brought out of Dimbar the dragon helm of Doromin, thinking that it might fit Töúr's thought above his again. But it did not. It might lift Töúr's thought again above his life, but in the wilderness as the leader of a petty company. But still, Töúr would not return to Doriath, and Beleg, yielding to his love against his wisdom, remained with him, and did not depart. And in that time he labored much for the good of Töúr's company. Those that were on the hunt or sick he tended, and he gave to them limbus of Malian, and they were quickly healed. For though the grey elves were less in skill and knowledge than the exiles of Valinor, in ways of life of Middle-earth they had wisdom beyond the reach of men. And because Beleg was strong and enduring, far-sighted in mind as in eye, he came to be held in honor among those outlaws. But the hatred of Mím for the elf that had come to borrow Dorothea, the house of ransom grew ever greater, and he sat with Eben, his son in the deepest shadows of his house, speaking to none. But Töúr paid now little heed to the dwarf, and when winter passed and spring came, they had sterner work to do. Who knows now the counsels of Morgoth? Who can measure the reach of his thought? Who had been Melkor, mighty among the Ainur of the great song, and sat now a dark lord upon the throne in the north, weighing in his malice at all the tidings that came to him, perceiving more of those deeds, more of the purposes of his enemies than even the wisest of them feared, save only Melian the queen? To her often the thought of Morgoth reached out, and there it was foiled. But now again the might of Angband was moved, and as the long fingers of a groping hand, the forerunners of his armies probed their ways into Beleriand. Through Anak they came, and Dimbar was taken, and all the north marches of Doriath. Down the ancient road they came, and it led through the long defile of Sirion, past the isle where Minas Tirith of Finrod had stood, and so through the land between Malduin and Sirion, on and on through the eaves of Brethil to the crossings of Teglin. Thence the road went into the guarded plain. But the orcs did not go far upon it, as yet, for they dwelt now in the wild terror that was hidden, and upon the red hill were watchful eyes of which they had not been warned. For Töúr put on again the helm of Hador, and far and wide in Beleriand the whisper went, under wood and over stream and through the passes of the hills, saying that the helm and the bow that had fallen in Dimbar had arisen again beyond hope. Then many who went leaderless, disposed, but undaunted, took heart again, and came to seek the two captains. Durdukuthoro, and the land of bow and helm, was in the time named all the region between Teglin and the west march of Doria. And Töúr named himself anew Gurthal, the dread helm, and in his heart was high again. In Mengroth, and in the deep halls of Nagathron, and even in the hidden realms of Gondor, the fame of the deeds of the two captains were heard, and in Angband also they were known. Then Morgoth laughed, for by now the dragon's helm was Hurin's son to be revealed to him again, and ere long Amunrud was ringed with spies. So in the waning of the year, Mene, the dwarf, and Eben his son went out from the house of Ransom to gather roots in the wild for their winter store, and they were taken captive by orcs. Then for a second time Mene promised to guide his enemies to the secret pass to his home of Amun-Rud, but yet sought to delay the fulfillment of his promise, and demanded that Gorthal should not be slain, and that the orc captain laughed. And he said to Mene, "Assuredly Töúr, son of Hurin, shall not be slain." Thus was Barandai betrayed, for the orcs came upon it by night and unawares, guided by Mene. There many of Töúr's company were slain as they slept, but some fleeing by an inner stair came out upon a hilltop, and there they fought until they fell, and their blood flowed upon the Sergon, that mantled stone. But a net was cast over Töúr as he fought, and he was enmeshed in it, and overcome, and led away. And at length, when all was silent again, Mene crept out of the shadows of his house. And as the sun rose over the mist of Sirion, he stood beside the dead men on the hilltop. But he perceived that not all those that lay there were dead, for by one his gaze was returned, and he looked into the eye of Beleg the elf. Then with hatred long stored, Mene stepped up to Beleg, and drew forth the sword Anglak, and lay beneath the body of the one that had fallen beside him. But Beleg, stumbling up, seized back, took the sword, and thrust it at the dwarf. And Mene, in terror, fled, wailing from the top of the hill. And Beleg cried after him, "The vengeance of the house of Hador will find you." Now Beleg was sorely wounded, but he was mighty among the elves of Middle-earth, and he was moreover a master of healing. Therefore he did not die, and slowly his strength returned, and he sought in vain among the dead of Töúr to bury him, but he found him not. And then he knew that Hurin's son was yet alive, and taken to Angband. Alright, I know I'm mispronouncing these words, but we're 10 minutes into this video. Let's have a little history lesson, give you a little bit of my perception of this. This is the Silmarillion. This basically tells the tale of the entire Middle Earth in one book. The best that Tolkien can. I am reading chapter 21, I think. Yes, I am reading chapter 21 of Töúr and Trumbar. And also known as, oh shoot, I lost my page. Also known now as, I never realized this, Gorthal. Gorthal. He was known as Gorthal as well. Me reading this to you is helping me discover a lot about Töúr, my favorite character in Middle-earth. So this is of Töúr. Töúr was his actual name, given to him by Húrin, his father. Töúr. So we'll continue when I get back.